I'm Sir Isaac Newton, if you couldn't tell. And, of course, I'm famous for inventing the laws of physics. And a lot of people think they're very complex, but it's pretty simple. The one day I was just walking down the road, and it kind of hit me. And I thought, an object in motion must stay in motion unless another object acts upon it. Every object in motion will stay in motion unless another object acts upon it. And then there's my second law, which states that the acceleration of an object is dependent on two variables. 1, the net force acting upon the object, and 2, the mass of the object itself. My second law, it shows that the acceleration of an object depends on the force acting on the object and the mass of the object itself. So, this is a rather light object, and I'm not going to kick it with very much force, so it won't go very far. Watch this. I'm going to use the same ball, but I'm going to kick it with a lot more force to prove that if I kick it harder, the ball will go much further. Now watch. And of course, there's my third law, which I declared that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. When I invited my acquaintance over to test out an experiment. So what we did was we took two spheres to our chests, and we ran at each other and tried to see if we would bounce off of each other instead of just staying there. And sure enough, it worked. So this is my third law, and it proves that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. No, didn't see you there. Too busy changing the world. Well, anyway, even though my laws are very, very old, I still think that they change the world today. Like, without them, what would our life even be? For instance, take my first law. Without my first law, then there'd be no cars. They wouldn't make gas pedals or brakes, and there would be nothing. We'd still be walking around like a bunch of idiots. Like, my first law, of course, as you know, it states that every object in motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by another object, and every object in rest must stay at rest unless acted upon by another object. If a car were to just stay at rest, then you couldn't do anything. It's just a machine. And if it were to stay in motion, you couldn't stop it. There'd be accidents everywhere, and it wouldn't even be a practical invention. And I think you should thank me for that. And my second law is very important too. Take a punter or a kicker in football, for instance. When they punt or kick the ball, they wouldn't have known how much force to actually use to get a perfect arc to land where they wanted it. If it weren't for my second law, football might not even been. And last but certainly not least, my third law. If it weren't for my third law, which I declared that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, then I don't even think life itself could manage, because people could collide into each other and there'd be no force to hit someone. Like when I used to go to school, I would bump into people and it just I could have just ran someone over if it weren't for my law. Like in the hallways of any school, people bump in, especially small hallways. You just bump into someone and you just bounce off each other. You're like, oh, sorry, but if not, then you just plow through them. And what type of life would that be? That's not a quality of life I want to live in. And that's pretty much why I made these laws. I made them to help the world, and I feel like that's exactly what I did. So is it true that you know Sir Isaac Newton?
Yeah, me and him, we were pretty good friends way back in the day, but, after he made those laws, everyone kind of hated him. He's just a weirdo now. We were like this. Now we're probably like this, maybe like this, He's not a cool dude anymore. Those laws are just whack.
So why don't you, hang out with Sir Isaac Newton anymore?
I stopped hanging out with Sir Isaac Newton after he made those 3 laws. He became full of himself, He locked himself away from the world, kept to himself, kept trying to make new laws and inventions, a lot of crazy things. He really just made those 3 laws and dipped.
So what were you thinking when he made those laws?
Before he made the laws, he seemed like a pretty cool guy, but once he made the laws, I thought he was crazy. It changed that, no one knew what he was talking about. I thought he was on drugs.
So, do you even understand Sir Isaac Newton's laws?
Of course not. No one understands his laws. They're crazy. There's like one other dude on the world, maybe, like, and he just as smart, just as crazy, and he barely gets it. Like, I don't think that these are gonna be helpful for anyone. They're like have any use in the future at all. Like, they're just crazy. Makes no sense.
All right, that's all the questions. Thanks for.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah.